Hi, good evening. Welcome to Talking With. I'm your host, Yale Cohn. Coming up in just a few days is the two-day EPX Animation and Gaming Conference, which is going to be held at the University of Iowa's Art Building West. This two-day conference features a veritable lineup of heavy hitters from the animation and gaming industries, including some of the folks from Gazillion, Leica Studios, and Disney Interactive Playdom. It's also featuring some of the makers and creators of the very popular video game Marvel Heroes, the indie video game smash hit Fez, and the very well-received and highly praised animated film Paranorman. I, however, am not at all qualified to talk about any of these things. Longtime viewers of the show may say, Yale, you're not qualified to talk about any of the things you talk about, but I'm not going to play games with something as important and culturally relevant as animation and gaming. I am, however, very fortunate to know someone who is, and with the miracle of technology, I can bring him into the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Eklow.
Yes, I'm Josh Eklow, and I'm joined by Alexis and Ryan of EPX Studios, who are putting on an event called EPXCon very soon on April 26th and 27th, and it's a free-for-all. It's free for all to come and enjoy the talks and the master classes and all that good stuff. But enough of me talking about it. I want to ask Ryan and Alexis all about it. Guys, what is EPXCon and EPX Studios?
Well, EPX Studios is a student organization. We make games. We teach each other stuff too. It's a learning experience.
Yeah, we're all a group of students, mostly beginners, learning Photoshop and 3ds Max. Mm-hmm. And this year we're using Unity 3D as a game engine to build our game. So we're learning all these skills because the university doesn't quite yet have a course set up for game development, and also the environment of a game studio is so much different than a classroom setting. So we're exploring that too. But we also host events like EPXCon, and we do game jams, and we visit local facilities. Last summer we visited the driving simulator and saw what they do, which was a really cool experience. So yeah, we do a lot of different stuff, but yeah, we're all students, we're all learning. So
okay, so EPX Studios is sort of there's not a game design or game development program, and this is sort of the way that you guys are sort of taking advantage of university resources and
right.
This learning environment and sort of teaching yourself that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and actually. Just this last fall, they started an animation curriculum at the university, mm-hmm. and that was really kind of sponsored by our group, which formerly AIUI. We used to be Animation and Interaction at the University of Iowa, but now we changed our name to EPX Studios. But really, because of our influence, the university started to pick up an animation curriculum, which is really cool, and it's brought just a whole new dimension to what we do and what the college offers. And it's just really great. What
part of the university is the animation program in? Is it in the art program or the?
It's the art program, but it doesn't count towards like your degree or anything. Right now, it's just like an elective class.
Okay.
So we're slowly but surely paving the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's so interesting to me about seeing what you guys do is it's a combination of artistic skills with sort of engineering skills.
Right.
And it seems like almost like a marriage of graphic design and like computer engineering or
right. And it's like the polar opposite side of the brain too.
Right.
One's left brain, one's right brain, and how do you fit those together? And how do you get creative types to sit next to a logical, methodical? This is how you do something, and get something beautiful produced from that, So it's an experiment, to say the least.
Well, that's what games are, kind of. It's
right.
The joining of like these two worlds, like the artistic, beautiful side, and then like the hard programming side. Mm-hmm. That's why they're so cool.
So as a group, you all work on one game? Together?
That's what we've done. This is our third. We're working on a third game now, and Alexis has been part of it. I've kind of taken a little bit of a back seat, more of a leadership kind of guidance role because I'm a more experienced programmer. So I kind of took like the lead position, and I've passed that over to a guy named Paul Yant this semester. A great guy, very talented. But yeah, so I've kind of taken a little bit of a back seat, and more of a guidance. This is how we do things.
So do you sort of distribute the roles on the team? Are there people who are more looking at the sort of behind the scenes programming and people who are doing the art? Or does everybody sort of get to, dabble around in all the parts of the game? Or how do you guys distribute the labor?
Well, initially we actually had applications where you had to apply for a position. But over the course of the semester, things kind of go their own direction. We have people who are programmers and who are assigned this task, and maybe they're too busy or their schedule gets crazy, and so it just kind of falls into somebody else's lap. So it definitely evolves. So yeah, it's a creative process, so it's kind of fluid.
Yeah, we designed it so that every level has like an artist, a programmer, a lead. So there's lots of overlap between everything. But I think that's part of the fun.
What is the game that you guys are working on right now?
Time Trap.
Time Trap.
Yeah.
It's about, was it Brainy Boy and Brawny Girl, and what happens? There's a time machine, and the pieces like scatter across like these different times, and so you have to collect all the pieces. It's kind of like what's that game? Castle Crashers? Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the gameplay is like Castle Crashers, where you just go in and beat the crap out of everything on screen.
Yeah.
But so they get in an argument, and the two main characters get in an argument, and the pieces of this machine, this time machine, get distributed across times, and you have to go back and collect them, and there's chaos all along the way. So.
It's interesting that it's like Castle Crashers, because it seems like I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there's this sort of there's a lot more appreciation now for retro games and retro genres. Like Castle Crashers is like an old school beat 'em up
Right.
game,
Yeah.
and it seems like a lot of indie games or games that people are working on in small groups tend to. A lot of them will be, like platformers or, beat 'em ups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And do you think that's a matter of those people being able to, since they can do whatever they want, they do, games that maybe would not be considered, like the AAA, representation of the most cutting edge technology, or do you think that people who just appreciate games more, or why do you think that tends to be, or maybe you don't even agree with it?
I think it's kind of like, it's almost like punk rock. Like punk rock got its roots from, like, We Hate Kansas and Toto and Styx and all these massive, like, rock opera things, and we're just gonna crank out 2-minute, songs, 3 chords, we can't even play our instruments, and just make noise. And I think there's a little bit of that element, like, screw these guys with these, $2 billion budgets. We're going to make a game that's cool and fun and we like, and hopefully somebody else likes too. And on top of that, there's also that now there's so many tools available to people, and I think that really kind of defines. I mean, you can use Flash, you can use Unity. Unity is really accessible to almost anyone, and so there's so many more tools out there that anybody can get up and crank them out. And I also think there's another element of like. When we were kids, what we really liked was like, Zelda on the NES and or Super Nintendo. And so there's always like a soft spot in our heart for those types of games. And so playing those now and making games like that now is really, kind of a way to, reference your childhood in a sense.
It's interesting that you mentioned that there are so many tools, because there really are so many tools available to do the art and to do the programming and to like the engines and the game libraries that are available, and so much of that stuff is free.
Yeah.
And I think what's so interesting about it is there's still this sort of aura around games where it's like even people that play them constantly, it's sort of beyond their imagination that they could actually make one.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I mean, it's really powerful to, you know, once you sort of get past the learning curve of some of the programs and even just start to sort of understand the logic behind it, it becomes really empowering to, you know, like, I love games and I could make a game.
Mhm.
You know, like, and it doesn't even have to be your profession. It could be something that you just do, you know, on nights and weekends. And eventually you can put out a game, and if you enjoy doing it, and, you know, that's great. And maybe, you know, a few people will like your game. That's even better. And you know, the way that it is now with, you know, online distribution, you could even sell that game and
Yeah.
make some money. You know, whereas, you know, not too long ago, if you wanted to make a game, you know, you'd have to get, like, you just couldn't do it because you would need the, you know, the development kit for a console
Right.
and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So it seems like the environment has really changed to suit, you know, more developers and small groups and you know, students or amateur developers.
Yeah, indie.
Indie developers, right? Exactly. Well, while we're talking about that, maybe I could ask you guys, what makes an indie game indie? Because I can even remember when you know, indie film started to become a thing, and, you know, people were all about indie film, and then indie movies were being put out by these sort of indie distribution arms of big studios, you know, like Miramax is part of a bigger studio, and they would
Yeah.
release indie
Right.
movies that weren't really that indie, and sort of there was this creep of the word indie to go from meaning a method of production to more of an aesthetic. And I'm wondering if will we start to see that with video games?
I think we already have, sort of. I know there was a conflict with the game, the creators of Flower Journey, because people weren't considering that an indie game because they had help from other studios, like with their programming. So I think we're starting to see that now, which is, like, I love Journey, so I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, it's definitely something to think about, though, because I know, like, indie games are supposed to be like just like very small studios, but slowly, like, as they gather and, like, gain more popularity, they're becoming bigger, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Indie, it's hard to define. I mean, like you said, I thought you were going to say the graphics of Journey really define it as, because I think to a lot of people, like 8-bit games, you know, classic games are indie games, which I don't know, that's kind of, I don't know if I agree with that. But yeah, I think a lot of it's like no budget and no rules, you know. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You know, if you want to make this a game like Fez, you know, you just kind of like hang out. You don't really have a goal that you really have to accomplish. You just kind of hang out and go around and check things out and explore, and that's the game.
There seems to be a lot of mixing between, you know, what people are calling indie games, and then the games that people will bring up whenever the almost at this point tired debate of video games as art will come up. You know, like when people will say, "Are video games art?" They'll talk about, you know, Journey or Flower or Fez or Braid. You know, these games that are considered indie games but are also considered art games. And the way that I've always thought about it is, you know, like, a big studio is not going to spend, you know, millions of dollars and put thousands of people to work on, you know, a game that is artsy or you know, designed to, its primary goal is to convey a message or a feeling or an experience, as opposed to, you know, shipping, you know, moving units.
I think that's the beauty of indie games, though, is because there are no rules. I mean, occasionally there's, like, I know there's problems with Polytron and Fez and how that was like became like a big production deal. But I think that for most indie games, like, it's just a couple people that are like, let's just make a game because about a journey. So I think, but with big budget games, you can't really do that. You can't just be like, yeah, you know, just put $1 million towards this. Like, you have to really plan it out. But indie games, they don't really have that too much.
So one of the two, at least in my knowledge of Fez, it seemed like it was two guys making the game. But one of them is actually going to be here at EPXCon.
Yeah.
And I think that talk is Saturday, the 27th at 1?
At 1
is that
o'clock,
right?
yeah.
And that's Renaud Bedard?
Yeah.
So that'll be really exciting. Can you guys maybe talk about that and maybe some of the other folks that are coming and maybe just talk about the conference in general?
Yeah, we've got Tyler from Ellis from Gazillion. He's a 3D modeler. He's worked on Marvel Heroes. Renaud Bedard from Fez. He's a programmer. Charles Swanepoel, he's an art director at Disney Interactive. And then we have Ty Johnson, a 3D modeler from Leica, and he worked on Coraline. And then we have Farley Cherry. What's he?
He is a 3D rigger, which is a rig. So when you do animation, you model the character, what he physically looks like, and then you build a rig, which is a skeleton. And that way animators can take that rig and move the rig rather than moving all the millions or thousands of vertices on the character. Mm-hmm. So he's a rigger, and he teaches at a university, I can never remember the name, but a university near Boston. So he'll be great. But yeah, it's a really interesting lineup. I'm really happy. We started really late in the game. We started about mid-February. We didn't even think this was going to happen. And so to come this way and have this great lineup is just amazing.
Yeah, we were expecting, this just came out of nowhere because we just got elected our new board, and they're like, all right, we have to do EPXCon. And last year they started planning in July?
July. Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, maybe we can get 60 people, that'd be good. But now we're expecting 200?
We're hoping to get
That's
250 and fill the auditorium. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we've got a student art show, which is going to be really cool. Portfolio reviews, a meet and greet with a few of them, I think.
Yeah. Well, so they're all giving a talk, which is open to the public. And again, this is all free, but they're all giving about an hour-long talk with a Q&A afterwards. And then in addition to that, they are doing a technical demo to actually show what they do to the geeks in our group. And the public's invited as well, but we just don't think it's something that they would appreciate as much as us. But so they're all giving about a half an hour to an hour long demo of what they do. And Renaud, I think, is going to be really great because he's going to bring things that he did at Game Jams, like projects he built at Game Jams, and talk about Fez and the development of that. And so that'll be really interesting. Tyler has a great resume too. I mean, in addition to the stuff that Alexis mentioned, he was a 3D modeler on Spider-Man 3 and Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Happy Feet also. So you have that one. And Ty Johnson I think it's really just going to blow you away what he does, because he works on stop motion animation films, and that process, you imagine that to be like, okay, here's a clay figure, you put it on there, you move it a little bit, you take a picture, move it a little bit more, take another picture, and so I was working with him on what he was going to actually bring here, and I said, yeah, just explain all that stuff, how you move the camera, and he's like, yeah, I've got to clear up some misconceptions. That's not how we do any of it. And he started explaining it to me, and it's just amazing how they use tech to do it. They use Maya and 3ds Max to model the character, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's just brilliant how they do things, and it's amazing, cutting edge technology.
Well, I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised how many people are interested in that stuff, especially here in Iowa City. I went to the event that you guys had a couple weeks ago. At the beginning of the Game Jam, there was a series of talks on that Friday night. And I've been in Iowa a long time, and I know people who are really interested in games here in Iowa. And I don't really know why, and I felt sort of silly after. But I was really surprised that there is a gaming scene in Iowa, and it's really strong and good.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and I felt really bad. I was like, because normally I rail against people who say, Iowa doesn't have anything cool or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was even really surprised that there's a lot of game stuff happening in Iowa City and in Des Moines and Davenport, and I guess I shouldn't be that surprised because the way that people can work now is you can work remotely. You can sort of be wherever you want. So I guess there's not, in the sense if you want to work in television, you have to go to California.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't really seem like there is that for, game development. You know, like
Yeah.
studios sort of spring up. Like I had always known that there was Buttcat in Iowa City. You know, like I had heard, you know, about them, and you know, like I had a T-shirt from them that I got at the thrift store. And
Oh yeah, cool.
people would be like, "Oh, did you work for Buttcat?" And be like, "No, I wish." But you know, was that something that you guys wanted to contribute to, and that's why you started, you know, like wanting to do this conference, or what made you want to do EPXCon?
Well, we did it last year. I mean, last year we were AIUI, and we were led by a guy named Nick Solacek, who is just a great guy, and he just really had a vision for all this stuff, and he was just inspiring, and he did this, you know, of course with other people's help, but yeah, and so this year it came to appear that it wasn't going to happen, and so me and this girl named Megan Matthews, who's in our group, I talked to her and I said, you know, we should really try this, and I sent down an email, and you know, a few of us responded and said, you know, well, let's do it, and then we got a group, and Alexis joined us, and we just started working on it because you know, we had been allocated all these funds to put this together, and they were just going to go to waste. So, and it's just a shame because you know, you can bring all this talent. It's just amazing what we're doing, especially in so short a time. But it almost didn't happen. It would have been just a tragedy. And you know, we had the Indie Iowa event last week, and that was really almost an accident. I mean, we had a similar event last year too, but this year, this guy Andres Reinhardt, his name is so so different than what you think it's pronounced, but it's Andres Reinhardt, and he emailed me, and he'd heard about EPXCon and he wanted to attend. Well, we're all booked. And he had some cool stuff, and so I was like, well, maybe we can throw together, you know, a smaller, you know, precursor to the big event. And then I just invited some, you know, acquaintances I'd met from, you know, Des Moines and here in Iowa City, and it turned out to be just brilliant. And like you said, to have this stuff in Iowa City and have all this talent, and I mean, Andreas, I really didn't know what he did, but I saw they created a game called Darkest of Days.
Yeah, which I had heard of.
Had you really?
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it, and no idea. And 8 Monkey Labs, and oh, it sounds cool, the logo's cool, but they're from Ames, Iowa.
Right.
I mean, you know, like, it's just bizarre to not know that. But, and yeah, they create, they work on, or Andres works on Marmoset Tool Bag. And that's one of the top, that's like common knowledge to people who work in the industry. It's just, it's such a big deal. It's like, I looked at the logo the first time, I was like, Marmoset, what is that? And I just kind of copied it and pasted, like, okay, maybe this will get some people to our event. But it's a big deal, and I didn't realize it. And to hear him come speak was just amazing, just phenomenal.
I think it's especially important for like EPXCon and all these different things, because there is such like a broad, so many fans of video games that the university like just doesn't like offer like what we need. And I remember like I went to my counselor, she's like, what does he want to do? I was like, I just want to make games. She like recommended EPX Studio, and I'm so glad. And I think it's just important that we like get exposure, especially because we're not in like LA or like where you get all these cool names, and we like it's important that we like bring them here.
Yeah, well, it seems like, you know, the game development stuff, so much of it is a collaborative you know, work. You know, like I think that the image that people, you know, get, and maybe sometimes rightly so, of, you know, video game enthusiasts and video game, you know, developers is like, you know, somebody alone in a dark room. Like, but, you know, like so many of the stories that we heard at the Iowa folks talk was, you know, like they met, you know, somebody here in Iowa and they're making games together, you know, it's like, or it's, you know, this person makes the music for my games, and it's this sort of collaborative, communal, like just making things with people who maybe start out as your friends or maybe become your friends. But it seems like, you know, like a university or even a town with a university like Iowa City is like the perfect place for, you know, a hotbed of this sort of development, because, you know, even just going to a thing like a game jam and just being around other people who are working on things and making things, even just that is really profoundly empowering and influential and exciting, and you know, on a very philosophical level, but even on a practical level. I mean, we were there for, you know, only a few hours, and we had some, you know, I'm working on something, and we had a programming issue that was taking us weeks, and somebody just, you know, like just do this, and then it was solved, you know, over the span of 5 minutes, and then we, you know, made that contact, and it was really nice. So I mean, that seems like something that's really powerful. So the fact that this group exists is so awesome, but it's like, to make it really awesome for everybody, they all need to know about it.
Yeah.
And the maybe not the more the merrier, because that might be insane if every single person that played games thought they were going to make one. But it is something that a lot of people can really get involved in. Quickly, I wanted to ask, the name of the group used to be, can you tell me what it was?
It's
was
AIUI.
AIUI.
Yeah, Animation and Interaction at the University of Iowa.
Interaction. So
Yeah.
one thing, and quickly, maybe this will be opening a can of worms that I don't want to get into, but I think a lot of people, when they think of games, and maybe this has to, maybe this is part of the games, are they art or not argument, is even just this word, games, almost implies that something is a toy.
Yeah, right.
And interaction, I think, is something that people are less familiar with, but it doesn't have the same implication.
Yeah.
So, do you guys find that you're trying to, use games as a word that people know and like and get excited about, or are you trying to maybe even steer clear of games because maybe they have this implication and interactive experience doesn't? I mean, like when I think of a lot of these really profoundly meaningful games, like you might not even really think of it as a game. It's like a game is something that somebody wins. And maybe with a lot of games, nobody really wins. You just sort of have this experience.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting thing that I was thinking about a lot when I was watching the talks that you guys put on, because like when you watch a film, you don't beat a film. Like watching a complete film, you don't say, I beat that film.
Right.
I watched the whole thing. But when you play a game, even now, even with most games being designed for you to complete, you still say like, yeah, I beat that game. So how do you guys sort of work around that whole, sort of burden, maybe? I don't know if you think it's a burden, but
I think the most important part is that it is interactive, because you've got games like Heavy Rain and Journey, which
Great game.
like they're not games in the traditional sense. Like you don't like shoot anything or like collect anything really. I guess sometimes you do, but they're almost like interactive movies. But I think that games can be are becoming so broad. Like not anything can be a game, but you can make a game out of almost like any idea or theme. I think that's like a really good thing. It definitely I think it's progressing the the business farther.
Yeah, I don't know, the whole debate. I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that I don't think games are art yet. I think they're going that direction, but I really think it's more craft, and it's approaching art. Games are becoming more of an experience, more of an intellectual thing than button mashing, which is cool. But as far as the games thing, they're games. I mean, you deal with we're not sending, I mean, people have this idea that, if you're a programmer and you send things to space and do all this crazy stuff, I don't know, manage, booking and accounting and all that stuff, that you're really doing something. And when you're creating video games, you're not. But I mean, I really challenge that, because to create video games takes so much effort, and so many different things have to mesh well. You have timing, you have logic, you have art and visuals and sound, and all these things have to combine to create an experience that not only has to work, but has to be enjoyable, to be successful. So yeah, I just, games are games, but there's so much more than that.
Yeah. Well, it's been so wonderful talking with you guys about video games. Obviously, that's something that video game fans do often, but it's nice to talk about it sort of in a more, I'll be pretentious and say meaningful way. But I'm definitely looking forward to more of this happening at EPXCon and in the future with EPX Studios. If you want to find out more information about EPX Studios or EPXCon, you can go on Facebook. Is that correct? And look
Facebook.
up EPX Studios. EPXCon is happening on April 26th and 27th at Art Building West, which is a, you can find out where that is on the internet, obviously. Anything else that people should know quickly?
Yeah, you can check our website out at www.uiowa.edu and then _EPX.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Ryan and Alexis of EPX Studios for coming in and talking with me, not Yale Cohn, but Yale Cohn will be back next week with another episode of Talking With. So tune in then. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned to PATV 18.